This is the Masters of Flow Summer Talks, and it's an initiation that our community, we are the community of Flow masters who started training on peak performance and Flow Neuroscience in particular. And me and Sarah, we've been sharing a lot of interest and a lot of stories about how we came out from burnout and how we are moving into the space of learning how to perform in a different way. And flow seemed to be the key word for both of us on finding really that mojo that works for us as high performers, but not burning out in the corporate space. So let's just introduce ourselves really briefly. Sarah, can you just say a few words about you, your background, and how you came into this whole flow space?
Yeah, thanks, Iris, and thanks for joining us, everybody who's on the live stream and then maybe listening later. So I'm Sarah Davis. I am a former senior finance leader. I've earned my stripes through all sorts of organisations for the best part of 3 decades, from globals to UK-based and across all sectors. I think I've led big teams. I've burned out at least twice during that career. And I think what led me into Flow and into the neuroscience program that Iris and I have been in, it's just that curiosity about how we can do things differently to get probably even better results for ourselves from within our bodies. But yeah, that idea of it just felt to me, probably in the last 5 years, that how I was working wasn't working for me. It was delivering, but yeah, it wasn't working for me. So yeah, I think that's why I'm here. Active recovery has been like my oh yes moment along this journey, really. And simple but revolutionary at the same time. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and I find a lot of similarities, and it's one of the reasons that we have connected a lot during this year, as we're learning about flow and exchanging so much about our experiences. In a very similar way, I also burned out in the corporate rat race and the corporate grind, and then at some point I just completely withdrew and said, okay, there's got to be another way. I don't know what, I don't know how, but also after 20 years of corporate experiences for me, I just wanted to find a way to continue channeling that drive, that desire, that energy to create, to expand, to do bigger and better things in life as a human being, but without burning out. And flow, I came into flow after doing a good 6 years of inner work and inner journey. I went on the other extreme. I just wanted to kind of understand my emotional intelligence experience. I realized inside I was still a 5-year-old girl, struggling very much through all of my emotional ups and downs and without really understanding them. So very reactive, very much in my professional and my personal life as well. So as I was doing all of this inner work and coming more into emotional homeostasis space, and then the next level of me wanted to come out, and I didn't want to do it like a 9-to-5er, and that's all I've learned how to do. It's just the 9-to-5 world. And I'm like, well, how do I create a new version of whatever it is that I want to bring into the world in a different way without being that disciplined robot who then will just burn out again, working 10, 12 hours a day because this is what I want to do. And so that's when Flow and Stephen Kotler's work came into my life last year. And as I encountered his work, I was just really fascinated with the concept of getting into flow state and, more importantly, training to bring flow in my everyday life as a regular thing rather than just something that you reach once in a while when you have a super idea or when you're having great fun, or, because in my mind, the concept of flow was always just something out there that happens every once in a while, or it just happens to this really extreme sports or this really great athletes. I never related that we could flow in our everyday lives, being very normal people, and we can still bring flow down to earth. And that's what really excited me. And that's why I got into this high level, very extensive, intensive training, because this has been a 1 year of like PhD level studying and training. And I think still many of us haven't probably gone through, a good 3/4 of the material. Is just so much science, so much research behind this body of knowledge. It's just fascinating. And so we decided to kind of have this talk so we could talk a little bit about some of the key things that each of us kind of took away as the Holy Grail. And active recovery is definitely the Holy Grail for me and for Sarah as well, for you as well. And so do tell me a little bit about, why is active recovery your Holy Grail?
And I guess the one thing I just wanted to add as well is that my mission now is like, not everybody wants to leave the corporate world or their jobs. And I'm on that mission. I find it really exciting, learning what I've learned, applying it in my own life, but that sharing it with other people so that, people who love their job. I did love my job. I would have loved to have stayed, but I was too far on, I'd gone too far to be able to find a way to implement some of these practices that would have made life sustainable there. So that's my mission. And again, I find it so exciting that if, leaders in organizations can embrace using flow to supercharge output, imagine them encouraging teams. It's like it is. I think, Stephen Kotler's other book, Fangirl, The Art of Impossible, is a great one. So that was a small sidebar, but you can probably tell it really fires me up. And I think the thing for me is recovery. Why does recovery matter? And I think all of us, to some degree or other, have thought about high performance. Being a high-performing team is a conversation that will happen in organizations across the world. And I think when that conversation is happening, performance isn't really clearly defined for people. And so everybody takes it away. It's all about pushing harder, doing more, keeping going, without acknowledging, in my experience anyway, and I'm sure I've been one of those leaders that goes, I want to be a high-performing team by 2022. And probably scaring a lot of people, going, oh my gosh, am I going to have to give my life to this work? But what we don't acknowledge is that our limiting factor isn't how much effort we can put in. It's actually how well we can recover. And I think there was something in our training that was high performance requires mastery of recovery, right? It's like it's a non-negotiable, because I think many of us have lived experience of performing at a really great level, but it only goes one way, because without recovery, your returns on your time diminish, and you find yourself either on the edge of or in burnout. So I find it really interesting to learn some science about why that happens. And this very, I feel very intelligent when I use the phrase allostatic load, but that very educated.
Very sciencey.
Yeah.
But we've done our homework.
Exactly. Tick. But I think it is that in that little phrase, it's that wear and tear of constantly adapting to stress. And, I used to think my recovery was in the gym, pounding on a treadmill or something. But that idea of, we know in the exercise world that we can overtrain. And if we don't recover, that magic in the rest day of athletic or strength or whatever performance applies across into our mental performance, which is, that was a bit of like, oh, of course, but not something I heard people talk about at all. So yeah, too much load on our brains, and without recovery, we just end up like little husks, unable to focus, no energy, relying on caffeine and energy drinks. And eventually that, if you don't address it, it leads to burnout. So yeah, that idea now of I know that recovery determines the ceiling of my performance and any human's performance. And without, moving between intense work and intentional recovery, we're not going to be able to access flow states. And flow states is where the juice is, right? I don't know how you feel about that. Is there anything kind of...
Yeah, for sure. It's everything that you said. And active recovery, when I realized it was the holy grail for me as well, was when I heard about active recovery. And then I thought, of course, it's so obvious, right? Like, we know we need to sleep in order to feel normal tomorrow and recharge, but somehow almost nobody's really talking about it or doing it properly. So we know we need to sleep, but we all kind of sleep late or don't sleep enough or wake up too early. Like, we're always trying to squeeze in that sleep time. And it's the same thing with every other piece of active recovery, which is, of course, we know that, walking in nature and taking a swim or working out or meditating, we all know that's good and it recharges us. But somehow we don't do it. And if we do it, sporadically. There's no structure and there's no understanding of the timing that we need to, the structure of the active recovery, basically. Like, from low intensity to high intensity active recovery, and how much time, between our work and our active recovery, like, how do we weave it in? And it just blew my mind, because it's like you said, without active recovery is, I think, the other side of the coin of flow performance and, high performance in all of its life. It's literally like the other half. And sometimes I think it's even probably more,
Sure.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like it's even a bigger piece, because with the right active recovery, you can come back to your high performance better. Every time you can up your game, you can get better and better and better at your performance if you active recover the proper way.
Yeah, it is absolutely that about raising the floor. I had this, you've just reminded me of a message exchange I had with someone I've known for years, and it was on a Friday night, and I just dropped him a message going, "How charged is your battery?" It was Friday night, and he came back at me with, "Oh, it's a solid 18%." I'm like, hey, how are we going to get you over, even 75% across 2 days of the weekend, when he was probably going to stay connected to work at some point across that time? So that idea of being able to raise that baseline of recovery of your normal operating state from the hang in there till Friday night, when, very much my experience was, I can't wait till I get to that first glass of wine. I put my feet up on the sofa and just zone out on Netflix, right? Yeah. And feeling that in some way was a reward for a week of hard work and, good delivery. When realised, again, through this training, realising that, while that might be relaxing, it's not actually replenishing that, your energy, your entire nervous system. You're depressing it with the alcohol, and you're kind of just taking your brain out while you consume your choice of Netflix or whatever else. So I think that also learning that there is a difference between relaxation and recovery, and what that looks like, was always also a bit of a, oh yeah, obvious moment, but not, because I think we've gotten so accustomed to living our lives in the rhythm of drain yourself to 18%, then maybe probably more numbing out for the weekend. Oh, here we go, Sunday night. Oh, gear up for Monday morning. So yeah, that passive recovery numbs us, I think, is what I've taken away, whereas active recovery really restores us, and those being some more intentional. I could argue that my intentional practice of a chilled glass of white wine was intentional, but probably not in the right way.
Yeah, and that you just made such a good point. The difference between resting and active recovery. And because we kind of started backwards, but intentionally we started with why it matters, and assuming that pretty much everybody understands the word recovery. When you say active recovery, it's kind of self-explanatory. It is pretty telling. But here we come to the piece of what is active recovery really, and you just made a very good intro. We think, resting is what replenishes our bodies and our minds and gets us ready for the next work or the next project or the next day. But active recovery is resting actively. And while having a glass of wine and watching TV can be a nice thing to do, and I absolutely every once in a while still do it, it's like you said, it's not replenishing your body. And why do you need to replenish? What are you replenishing? Is what you mentioned before, is that your body literally accumulates what we call the allostatic load, which is the biological toxins that the body excretes during the day from the foods we eat, the stress that we experience, all that hormonal activity and chemistry going on in the body during the day. It accumulates, and we're an organism like every other organism. We need to release that. We need to excrete that. So active recovery is literally the type of activity that will release that allostatic load from the body. And you can do it through high intensity activities like, HIIT training or strength training or, intense sprint training. That'll release a lot and very fast. But you can also do it through meditation and really that level of kind of activities, which, the body's not physically moving, but the process of meditation and breath work is clearing out a lot of allostatic load from your mind and also from your body. And ideally, you want to mix the two. So you want to create a certain active recovery schedule. And, for me, active recovery, it's like half of my calendar, literally. Half of my calendar is active recovery. The other quarter is work, and the other quarter is social time. Mm-hmm. Active recovery has a lot of social activities, but I put it under active recovery because my intention for that activity, for example, a hike is an active recovery activity for me, even though I do it with my friends or with, different groups of people. It's also social activity. So this is where we also start to stack active recovery activities together and then maximize the level of replenishment and reactivation that we get from active recovery activities.
Yeah, I love, and I think people listening to this will love that idea, Iris, of only having a quarter of your life at work, because that feels really soothing, but almost like, oh my gosh, how could I possibly? Which, you've kind of prompted me in a different way about that purpose of active recovery. And that idea of nervous system, right? So you're saying I spend a quarter, I intentionally calendarize work for a quarter of my time, and there'll be people who are like, how is that possible? How do we get things done, and how is that even responsible? But so I would suggest to those people right now, you start to use your breath to calm you. And this idea of active recovery, bringing your system out of, fight and flight, which is the onslaught of emails and Slack pings and Teams pings and everything that goes on in our daily life that our system hasn't evolved to filter out. That I think that sense is quite well known now, that we're responding to a saber-toothed tiger every time our Teams pings. But taking active recovery in that intentional way to bring you down downregulate your nervous system into the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest, where everything just feels smoother and more pleasant and less, in my head anyway, less spiky. Right, it's a place of calm. So yeah, I loved your idea of a hike in nature with friends. I mean, nature, immersion, amazing. You know, the idea of forest bathing, really well researched, really good for our nervous system and our mental well-being. But pairing that then with a bit of gentle movement, and then the social interaction with friends who support, encourage, and those nourishing relationships, that's a really awesome active recovery stack. Other things, doing stuff just for fun. Like when I left my job last year, I said, I'm going to learn to surf. I'm still learning to surf 11 months later. But I have so much fun falling off a board repeatedly, right? That thing of just, it's playful, it's not done with an aim. Well, maybe somewhere in, probably not, because mobility, right? But maybe somewhere in 10 years I'll have stood up on a board again. But I'm not doing it. It's just fun to be there, be in nature, and have a giggle trying and failing at something. But equally, it could be, you know, going for a sauna. Somebody was it one of our tutors was like sauna and meditation at the end of every day. Brilliant. Yeah. You know, they're so cold. I have a cold tank out the back that I dunk myself in when I can't get to the sea. Yeah, there are so many. There are so many. Yoga, massage, meditation. You mentioned. Thinking of those things that you do just for themselves that relax you. You know, and in some of the sessions I've done with people, I'll invite them to take, you know, a deep breath. And everybody, after just 2 minutes of like breathing, everybody will go, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And that's the first time that I have taken a deep breath today. We have, our breath is so powerful to us in terms of that nervous system regulation, but we're too busy. Well, certainly I, for most of my life, have been too busy. I'm quite glad that it just happens on its own, right? Yeah. So yeah, have I missed anything in my enthusiastic? Yeah, I just love talking about how many things can be active recovery, but you have to, you know, it's how you engage as well. Yeah. Very, very good points. Active recovery is intentional activity for fun and intentional activity for training. So here I think comes a really important piece is getting to know yourself, getting to know what works well for you. For me, for example, it works really well to have a challenge. So if I set a training goal, a workout goal, high intensity training, like that's a hard thing for me to get my body to, because it's hard for anybody to commit to 3 or 4 days a week of like 1 hour of just really heavy, hard training. So I like I like for it to be serious and intentional, and then I also like to bring fun to it. So, and I like your example of, okay, I want to learn something like surfing. For me, it was playing guitar, and that happened about 5 years ago. My friends just bought me a guitar for my 40th birthday, and I said, okay, well, I have no more excuse. I have to learn how to play the guitar. And in the beginning, it's just so stressful because, there's so much to learn, and I don't know how to do it. And I don't like not knowing something. I like mastering something. I just like the phase when I'm good at it. And the struggle phase was intense enough that I would kind of tend to push it away, and I didn't want to be 3 hours with that difficulty level. And then I had to find ways to make it fun, like you said, and then say, okay, what do I want out of it? Do I want to be
do I want to be a guitar player? Do I want to be a surfer winning gold medals? Or do I just want to learn it to have a good time? And I'm like, no, I just want to like learn 10, 20 songs just so that when I'm with people, I can play just to have a good time. And so that released a lot of expectation and a lot of anxiety from my body every time I would pick it up, because this program of our corporate world and our very squared society, it somehow inside of me, it's like, oh, if you're going to learn something, you have to do it like absolutely immaculately the best. And but tying this with active recovery is that learning a new skill like surfing, like even like guitar, that could also be active recovery for me. I could also put it in my active recovery calendar very well, and sometimes I do. I put dancing in my active recovery calendar, for example, because it is. And we're going to talk next about the structure of how do we weave in active recovery activities. And one of the ways is to take the things that you love doing, like hobbies, and actually put them in between your flow blocks. So I do part of the time consider between flow blocks, I put in my calendar active recovery, but what I'll do is I'll just pick up my guitar and I'll just play for like 10 minutes. And just the process of playing and singing, the singing will just allow me to release my voice, to release whatever little tension I was holding in that first, flow block that I had. So that was a really good point about making hobbies and learning new skills and turning them, them actually being active recovery. It's just a matter of how you choose to look at it.
Yeah. And that idea that you've just touched on there, which I know we're coming on to talk about, this how we build recovery in and make it happen, right? I'm thinking of one colleague in my last team who, when he was working at home, he worked at his dining table, and behind him he had a piano, and he was a really great pianist. So I'm now thinking I'm going to drop him a note to say, do you ever think about, because for him playing 10 minutes on that piano would change his state entirely and prep him to go to work deeply again, rather than just push on through feeling incrementally crushed and less effective by our own unrealistic expectations of how long we can perform at a high level before we drop off. So, if I may keep talking, it's this idea of, again, it's a new big word for me, is these ultradian rhythms. So these rhythms that happen in our body, cycles that happen every 90 minutes-ish, that mean we should be taking some sort of rest every 90 minutes. So they happen through sleep and all through the 24 hours in our body. It's this idea of, like Iris, you just said, you have your first flow block, 90 minutes of deep work, and then you take a 10-minute break to recover, just change gear in your brain and clear some of that load, clear some of that stuff out of your system. For me, I'll maybe just go and deadhead some stuff in the garden, being in nature, listening to the bees get annoyed at me. So we start literally at that level of every 90 minutes-ish, taking a break. And the idea of taking a break isn't doom scrolling necessarily on Instagram. It's doing something to reset. Think of it as pressing a reset button, because that's the way we're functioning, whether we acknowledge it or not. So that's why it's hard sometimes to sit in a 4-hour meeting without losing your concentration at some point. That's one reason, right? So yeah, I guess, Iris, I try to do that, and I try also to block the time in my calendar and call out what I'm going to do, because then I don't have to think about. I don't have to spend 5 of those 10 minutes go, what am I going to do? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. We can move
Yeah.
seamlessly, which felt really artificial to start with, that level of planning for me. Those of anybody who knows me, that's not a core part of my being, but it really helps. I have to say, it really helps, having experimented.
Yeah, it's that level of planning. They call it the ridiculous planning, I think, or something like that. They have this fun term for it's so meticulous, it's ridiculous, and most people don't want to do it. But there's a reason behind why you do it. Even the most creative and spontaneous person in the world, they want to get something done. They want to achieve something. They want to write a book. They want to climb a mountain. They want to finish this 90-minute presentation, and that's what purpose it serves. It's actually, it helps you do what you want to do and be spontaneous outside of that, meticulously, ridiculously well-planned block. And as we're moving into why active recovery is important, what it actually is, and then how to structure it in your day, I would also add that anybody who's listening to this talks or is in the flow field or has heard about Steven Kotler, he has a mantra, like a motto, which is get your biology to work for you. So, behind every concept and training of how to get into flow is this understanding of what is your body doing, and how do we create, how do we design and craft a life to adjust to what the body is best at in each of these times. So as you mentioned, the infradian rhythm, it's a 90-minute to 120 minutes plus minus. This is what your body is doing pretty much 24/7, like you said. We have the circadian rhythm, so the body is doing something in the 24 hours, and within it, there are these 90-minute cycles, and also in sleep, you have 90-minute cycles, and we touched a bit on sleep before, but sleep it's the holy grail of the holy grail of the active recovery, right? Active recovery is the holy grail, but sleep is like the other
next level.
The next level. It's like 50% of the active recovery is how well you sleep. And sleep in itself has 5 90-minute cycles where the body is doing different things. It's consolidating memory, it's cleaning out the garbage, it's regenerating a lot of the damaged cells. So as it's doing all of these processes, and actually there's been an interesting conversation about that, sleep, we should call sleep active recovery, because it's actually not, you're not passive in sleep.
No.
In sleep, the brain is super active, and actually so much is happening in the sleep that we're recovering from that is probably even more active than we are in the day from that perspective. Yeah. So when we think of, okay, what is the body doing? What are our natural biological rhythms, like the circadian, like the ultradian? For women also is the infradian rhythm, which is our 28-day cycle, for women who are still in the premenopausal phase. And even postmenopausal, even though we kind of adjust more to the 24-hour rhythm, the body has memory. So in the concept of cycle syncing, they do talk about the women, the biologists, and the gynecologists who are studying the cycle syncing process. They do see that if the woman continues to cycle sync, the body has memories, and they can continue to have that rhythm of high communication, high energy, to a more internal and resting time of the month. So in that active recovery structure, I would say the fundamental thing is getting to know your body, getting to know your biology. Where are you at with your own body? What age you are, and then look at active recovery from that perspective. What is your day like? What is your week like? And I liked Steven Kotler's work on active recovery, and Rian's as well, the Flow Research Collective, from this bigger, like they start from a bigger perspective. You have 365 days. And then you kind of zoom into, okay, active recovery is 50% of your work. And from the idea that flow state is an optimal state of consciousness and physical being, where you are at your highest performance. The neurochemistry that is activated is firing up like some of the most energy expensive chemicals in your body. So if we think of energy as the currency of the body, then the flow state is the most expensive thing you are doing for the body. And so when you think of it that way, in a flow state, we're talking about active recovery, assuming you're getting into a flow state as well, that when you get into a flow state, when you do your 90-minute blocks of flow state, you are spending the highest amount of energy from your body. So from that perspective, you want to take those short little breaks in between these flow blocks. And here comes a big challenge. What if you're flowing really high? You don't want to disrupt. You think like, oh, but if I start playing the piano or the guitar, or I'll take a walk, or I'll go to the garden, that I will stop the process. And I'm just finally getting into, like, my brain is now firing up, is having all this idea. So there's this fear inside that, you don't want to stop it. And I think this is an important point to talk about, why it's important to put these breaks in between the flow blocks when you are in the working space. Because even though you're afraid that you're going to stop the process of creation, actually, you're allowing it to integrate. Yeah. And Stephen Kotler talks about this very specifically. He says, always leave the work when it's at its highest. So that when you come the next day, you are excited about getting back into it. Because if you peak, in your work, and then your peak is going down, and then you end your work when, okay, you kind of had some closure on the project, the next day, the level of excitement to go back into it will be exactly at that low peak state. But if you're in a really high creative state, and you're like, oh my God, this is so exciting, I just want to keep on working, you're like, no, stop it here. So that the next day you'll get back into that point, you'll be so excited to continue. And the brain is integrating this level of work. So you're not disrupting your creative process, you're actually allowing it to integrate. And next time you come back even more primed, even more in flow.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Well made. And I think it's this thing again. I can feel myself of 2 years ago, if I had a big deck or report to deliver, that idea of, oh, I'm in it, I'll just keep going. I can feel that myself resisting that. But kind of another thing that I've learned across this last 12 months is take it as an experiment, right? These people aren't just plucking stuff out of the, there is out of the air. There is a lot of science and increasing science behind these ideas. So why don't I just experiment? And, almost with a little hypothesis, for the next 2 weeks, every time I'm going to be strict with myself. I'm going to cut myself off and come back. And I think this is what the result is going to be, but let me prove that to myself or disprove it, because there's very little to lose apart from, well, there's nothing really to lose, but there's a lot of potential gain. And again, I think what makes it hard to take that first step is we've all been living in these models for all our grown-up lives, and probably before, from when you were studying for your first set of exams. I'll just stay awake and I'll just get to the end of this chapter or this topic, rather than going, oh, well, I said I would work for 2 hours. I've done that, pack my books up and be happy with that. There's some kind of experimental changes that I think we need to experiment and encourage everyone to experiment with and see what happens, because it's kind of it's revolutionary but quite obvious that our bodies are, if, as you were talking about the many rhythms that our bodies are in, they're such complicated high performance machines just out of the box. And instead of we've read kind of the first page of the instruction manual and then gone, oh, I'm a terrible person. I don't even read instruction manuals, so I was at a disadvantage from the get-go. But that idea, we learn things, and then that's it for life. We don't go back and go, what's that warning light mean? And why would we want to take full advantage? This was the thing I was thinking when you were talking. I was like, why would we not want to treat these amazing mechanisms, organisms, in a way that lets them perform to their best? And surprise our preconceptions about what that might be. So yeah. Oh, sorry, Iris, you.
Yeah, that's exactly where we go. The more we get into this kind of conversations, the more excited we get. Why? Because the more universal truths I think we start to touch, and we start to see, and we start to feel. And that's why in this flow aspect of high performance, I find that our community has evolved so much in the space of getting into flow, not only as a way to get things done really well, but to get into a fundamental state of well-being. So that by doing the things that we want, doing them well, and then also feeling amazing with the fulfillment of achievement, quote unquote, the fulfillment of performing better and better, and also feeling good in our bodies, being in a state of the highest well-being by adjusting our nutrition, our sleep, our physical activities, our active recovery as a whole. It's just a very sustainable, long-term, amazing, I mean, we call it tool, but I think soon enough, in a matter of decades, this is going to be the way of living for probably most people anyway. And I would say that since we are kind of towards the end of our talk, how can we ground it a little bit more? And if you could give your perspective on how would you weave active recovery into a regular person's life? What would be like your top points to give to people who are watching this talk as to how you can bring that in?
I think I would want to encourage everyone to just start identifying some of those active recovery, what appeals to them, because what works for me is different than you, is different than, everyone. So just kind of reconnecting with those things that make you feel better, bring you a bit more peace. Yeah. And then once you've got those, can I put some time in my calendar, even if it's only once this week for 10 minutes, because I know how calendars get. But that idea of incrementally challenge yourself to bring more of it into the everyday. I think that would be a really powerful start. And then I think the other thing, and I know where we are in the year, it's the end of summer. It can feel like the longest 4 months of the year, or 3 months to Thanksgiving, 4 months to Christmas. But think about how you can build more active recovery across these periods. So can you completely disconnect for one full day a week? Maybe not this week, but can you plan to do that and then increment it? And I used to be, when I was in my old leadership role, it would get to, because our corporate year, half year was end of September, so we should have used half of our, very generous in the UK, I will admit, holiday allowance roughly by that point. And because we've been through summer, it wasn't an unreasonable ask. So I would sit around with my leadership team and say, okay, well, where's everybody up to across the whole team of however many people? Oh, well, so-and-so still got 28 days. I'm like, seriously? And so again, it was a bit of a, I was right moment with this calendaring of plan. don't go 6 months without more than your kind of weekend off, because it doesn't, I think somewhere in our material, that idea of a 2-week, the holy grail of a 2-week vacation fully allows that wear and tear to be repaired, the allostatic load to be cleared. So if you're not getting that once a year, you're cheating yourself badly in terms of your performance. And I know that's really hard in some jobs, in some, again, I will stand on the privilege of working in the UK. But that felt sense of people need to pace and plan vacation time, again, more intentionally, really came home to me through what I learned through the course. So yeah, I would say don't leave your recovery to chance, learning what you've learned. Put it in the calendar and treat it like a meeting, because it's more than that important.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And some of the big stones and practical pieces that stand out for me is number one, bringing active recovery every day to your life. And number two, the kind of active recovery has to be very intentional. So the science shows, and all the training shows, and high performance through the flow aspect is literally mimicking what athletes or the top performing people of the world have achieved, incredible feats of human potential. They have achieved that through a certain way of living life. And in every way, this level of performing is bringing what they do really well into our everyday life. So even in the corporate world, where it sounds like this is unrealistic because they have to follow the boss's schedule or the whole corporation schedule, it is the next wave of what the leadership needs to bring into their corporations as well. And whether it starts from the leadership or whether it starts from the employees, no matter what, this is what's happening. This is where everybody needs to get into. And so I would say the big stones are, you have to active recover at least 1 hour per day, like high intensity kind of recovery, or it could be a run, it could be a walk in nature, it could be a workout at the gym. But you certainly want to have, a good 1 hour a day, like focused active recovery. In between working blocks, like we mentioned before, a flow block can be anywhere from 90 minutes to 120 minutes. And I usually try to chunk them into 3 hours. So here you work with your prime time, and the prime time for flow is usually the first part of the day. So whoever can do that, but it doesn't matter. Whenever you figure out your flow time, every 3 hours of flow, you want to have a 1 hour recovery. Every 90 minutes of flow block, you want to have at least a 10-minute recovery break. The 10-minute can look like jumping jacks, just getting your blood flow to come back into your body. It could be playing music. It could be anything that we also call a boring break. So it doesn't take it doesn't stimulate you more than whatever it is that you're doing, right? So you want to be careful, whatever you do for those 10 minutes, it's not the phone, it's not, your social media, it's not devices, it's not anything that will be more exciting and more stimulating for the brain than the work that you're doing at hand. So 10-minute breaks every 9 minutes, 1 hour breaks every 3 hours of workflow, and that 1 hour a day has to be some level of good, focused, intentional, active recovery. And then you move that to the week. At least 1 day a week has to be full recovery. And when we say full recovery, it automatically means full disconnection from work, which means if you are going to bring your phone, your mailbox or anything that has to do with work has to be outside of that phone.
Yeah.
So part of the active recovery, it's fully and completely disconnecting from that which keeps your mind actively creating more allostatic load. The whole point is to disconnect so that you can clean out that allostatic load. And then we accumulate, so 1 hour a day, 1 day a week, 1 week a month, or it's actually 4 to 5 days a month.
Yeah.
right? And this always accumulates. So the 1 day a week, if it's every Sunday, then once a month, you'll do like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so you can accumulate days. And then every 3 months, you want to do at least a good 10 days.
Nice.
And then every other 3 months, you will accumulate. And the idea is that you have to completely disconnect and do something that absolutely recharges your body every day, every week, every month, every 3 months, and every year. And you keep accumulating. So after 3 months, you do another 3 months, and then in the year, you do at least, a good 10, 20 to 30 days, one after each other. So those, I would say, are kind of like the big tips, the big things that will make a difference in how we structure active recovery into our lives.
Yeah, it's like I've written that it's like the essential maintenance of being a human and expecting yourself to perform at any level. And yet, how many I would not have approached that before undertaking this training.
Yeah. It's like when you think of really high performers, they train most of their lives to perform less than 1% of their time.
Yeah.
And most of their lives, pretty much everything about their lives is training for this one moment of performance. And most of that training is actually actively recovering. It's just as much of a sport as it is the actual training of whatever field they do. So to that degree, I love active recovery. I think it is the Holy Grail. I think there's a lot of other Holy Grail pieces, but this one hits home for everyone because it literally gives us the right to take care of ourselves. Something we don't do and we forget to do because we think that, it's taking time from performing.
Yeah. I have also, just on that very point, I think some of it, I definitely saw that taking time away as selfish, and selfish as a negative, as a negative connotation. So I've tried a reframe of that, and I'm experimenting with being self-full, because when I'm recovered, I have more energy, I have more patience and more creativity. So that helps across every domain of my life, right? So recovery is a gift to ourselves and to everyone around us in each, whether that's work, family, community. Why wouldn't you? That's my pitch for recovery.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's been really wonderful being in this conversation with you, Sarah. There's always more and more unfolding and developing for us, for Flow, for our clients. And I am really, really, I feel really blessed to have been on this journey with you and to have this opportunity to share this with our communities.
Yes. Thank you, Iris.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.